Most people run their life this way. They try to manipulate what's going to happen. Well, I want my kids to grow up and be professionals. I want my wife to, do this and that and be a really good cook. I want to do this. So you kind of have these ideas, and you're constantly applying a little pressure here and a little pressure there and manipulating information, trying to make the world come out the way you know it's best and the way that's good for everybody from your own viewpoint. And you're constantly struggling because it never works. That's not a good way to approach life. A better way is let whatever happens, happens. And what's important is not what happens, but how you deal with it. That's what's important. So if you change the gears on life, stop trying to make it come out the way you know is best for yourself and everybody else, and just let it be and deal with it positively. Deal with it. Find the low entropy path there as best you can. And if you can't, and you're wrong, you make a higher entropy choice, well, that's okay. No penalty. The whole point is learning. What's the problem is if you don't learn. If it's a failure to learn, then that is not so good. But making mistakes, coming up with the wrong answer, that's fine. That's the path of learning. We learn from making mistakes. So I think this is the low entropy path, and I take it, no, it creates a lot of trouble. Then I have to think about that. Why did I miss that? Why didn't I understand that trouble was likely to happen? And then I learned from it. It was something about me, probably some fear I had or some other blinder on that I didn't see that as a possibility, or I didn't understand those people very well. I was judging them and, here's the way they are and here's the way they work, and that judgment was all wrong. So that tells me to stop judging people. So you learn from it, and then your life gets better and better because now you're in this virtual reality leveling up, doing what you should be doing, growing, becoming love, and you'll find that you end up happy most of the time. You smile, life is good. It doesn't matter so much what happens. It's all how you deal with it that matters.
What are some other telltale signs that you're living in alignment with the larger consciousness system? If it is the primary purpose to lower entropy, if one is doing that, what would be the byproducts of that in life?
Well, one really easy way to kind of measure how you're doing is to look at the last, whatever you can remember, say the last week. Go back in your memory and remember what you did for the last week, or if you can, only the last day, that's all right. But remember it. And if during that day or week, keep track of how many times you had negative feelings. When did you feel upset, hurt, angry, abused, misunderstood? Well, not just misunderstood, but misunderstood in kind of a negative way. Stress, all of those things. There was certainly anger, upset at other people. And think, how many times did I have negative feelings? Most people only have to go back about 2 hours to find a negative feeling. Most people have negative feelings all the time. Just the news makes them angry. Everything kind of makes them angry. People that disagree with them makes them angry. But if you grow up, that's not the case. You can say, well, I haven't had any negative feelings for as long back as I can see. Well, now you're doing really, really well. You are a low entropy person. If you're the average person, you have negative feelings off and on regularly. As you grow up, it's less and less. So that's how you can tell about how you're doing. Just the negative feelings. Annoyed, upset. Shouldn't be that way. Those people, they're screwing it all up for the rest of us, This kind of attitude. And we tend to blame everybody else for the things that we don't like. George made me angry. George doesn't make you angry. You choose to be angry. You have some sort of fear, and George just resonated with that fear of yours, and you get angry. So nobody makes you angry. Nobody makes you upset. Nobody makes you have negative feelings. All that comes out of yourself. So when you get rid of the fear, you get rid of the ego, You get rid of the beliefs. Beliefs are traps. You get rid of the beliefs. You're a happy camper. You enjoy your life. You smile a lot. You laugh. You play. And you're very productive. You get a lot done. And anything you need or want falls at your feet just as you need and want it. Life just, you seem to be very lucky, but you're not lucky. You're just leveling up in a game that's all about, lowering your entropy, becoming love. So that's how you know. If you look at your life and say, well, my life is just a series of struggles. I thought if I just get past this, if this relationship just worked out, if my boss just gave me this raise, everything would be good after that. And it may be good for a few weeks after that, or maybe even a few months, but you always end up back in that same spot with this hurdle that you have to get by or have to get over. If I could just get over this, and if that were true, everything would be downhill after that. And it doesn't work that way. The only way everything is downhill after that is if you grow up and start caring and sharing and cooperating, having compassion. You help people. You stop asking, what's in it for me? And instead you ask, how can I help? Then your life gets to be good and happy.
To bring this down to the immediately practical for people, if one wants to begin exploring in any program to develop one's own consciousness, I've heard you speak to how it must therefore start by getting acquainted and spending time exploring your own consciousness. So for those that want to deepen on that path of exploration, is meditation the place that you advise most people to start?
Well, meditation is the kind of the given answer to that question. Yes, everybody starts with meditation, but it's not the only path. There are two paths, and meditation has been the path of choice for centuries, if not millennia. Get acquainted with your own mind. Quiet your mind. Learn to be able to sit for as long as you want to, an hour, 2 hours with this, no thoughts. Just be with your own mind. When you get into that space, you let the world go. Your senses are no longer processing sense data. So you're really not here anymore, because processing sense data is what defines here. So you're not really here anymore. And where are you? You're just, it's the Descartes moments. You just, I think, therefore I am. I'm conscious, I'm aware, therefore I am. And when you get there, all you need from that point is an intention to do whatever it is you want to do. Now you are a mind in the consciousness system, and you are able to explore that system, gather data from that system, meet others out there in the non-physical, talk to dead people, whatever you want, that's available to you. But it's not just as easy as learning to meditate and there it is. It takes time to develop that intuitive side, and it takes understanding. So it's not a quick thing. But I had a lot of students who had trouble with meditation. And some of them, it wasn't anything attitudinal. It was just they're like ADD. Sitting still and having a quiet mind is pretty much impossible when you have a central nervous system that's jumping here and jumping there, and say, oh, just let everything go. And they can't do that. And I also had a lot of very left brain logic process types who just couldn't let go of that control. That anything that would happen on the intuitive side, that logical side would come in and crash it, wanted to analyze it, judge it right away, which would kill it, of course, because now you're in that logical side, and the logical side and the intuitive side don't work together. Now, you can teach them to work together, but most people, they don't. You can learn to be extremely right-brained, extremely intuitive, and extremely logical, both. You can be extreme in both cases, but that's only after a lot of years of practice do you get there. But there is another way for people who have trouble meditating, whether it's an overactive intellect or whether it's just some central nervous system twitch that they can't let go of, and that is through your imagination. It's an alternate path. And once I realized that, I wanted to make tools for those people, because that whole bunch of people who had been hanging out in my circles for years, and they still never had that out of body, was never successful at the paranormal things. So I developed this thing I called Tom's Park, which uses imagination to get to the same place. And the way you use that is you have to imagine something with enough information to basically consume your mind. So you imagine where you are. You're walking at a beach, but you're not just at a beach. You hear the surf. You see the surf going in and out. You hear the birds, and you feel the sand between. You can smell the salt water. So you smell, you taste, you hear, you see, you touch. All of those things have to be going in detail. And if you can practice, it takes practice to get that, and you get that detail going, then start off on a story. What do you find on that beach? Who else do you run into? And eventually, you stop playing the parts of all the characters like you do in a daydream, and the thing just takes on a life of its own. The people you meet, the things they say are not things that are even in your mind. And the story goes, what happens is the larger conscious system takes that story you've made and just continues it, and then takes you into a space where you've got something to learn. So it's another way to get out of body, if you will, to get into the non-physical space. You can do it through your imagination. And meditation usually is a beginner's tool. I know that's heresy to a lot of meditators, but it's mostly a beginner's tool. After you learn well enough, you can do that meditation in seconds. You don't have to sit down and quiet your mind and say your mantra and do all that kind of stuff. You're there. So you kind of stop the process and get there very quickly eventually. And from my own experience, I'd say that, how often do you meditate? They asked me. I said, well, I really don't meditate anymore. On the other hand, an equivalent answer is I meditate all the time. I'm always in a meditation state. So they're both true, equally true. You can just see it from either side. I'm in a constant meditation state. And to let the sense data go, I can do that in fractions of a second. So it's just a matter of, you get so familiar with that intuitive state in that space that you can just go there very easily. And life becomes different in the sense that now you have a much bigger decision space. Most people have a decision space that combines of their memory and the stuff they get from their senses, that it's interacting. So there's certain choices they have based on that. Once you live equally in an intuitive space, or equally able to get around in an intuitive space and an intellectual space, you find that you spend most of your time in the intuitive space, because that's has more information in it. It's a richer space than the physical space. So you live, say, 75, depends on the situation, 75, sometimes 80, 90, sometimes only 50, sometimes 40, but most of the time you exist in a state that is more intuitive than it is logical. And then you can pop into the logical state whenever you need to. And I have found that the two sides that seem to be incompatible, that intuitive state and that logical state, intellectual state, actually become good friends and work well with each other. And the intuitive side will get some information and pass it over to the intellectual side to do some assessment on it, do some analysis on it. And then that side that's intellectual will pass over stuff because it needs more information. It doesn't have enough information to do a logical problem. And then the intuitive side goes up and gets the information, passes it over to the intellectual side. So then you become not left brain or right brain, but whole brain. And all of that works together. And you just live in a larger reality than most people. You have the size of your reality is measured by the size of your decision space. So now you meet somebody and you know some things about them right away. Within 10 or 20 seconds, you got a sense of that person and who they are and what they are and what's inside and why they do what they do and all the rest of it, which makes it easier for you to be useful and to be helpful with those people. So you live in a space that is intuitive, but you're also rational and logical at the same time. So that's really where you're going to. If you're looking for end states, that's really where you're going to that sort of a thing. But that takes a long time